You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Records management is the discipline that governs how organizations keep, classify, and dispose of information in ways that satisfy legal, regulatory, and business obligations. In cloud environments, this discipline becomes both more complex and more powerful, since vast amounts of information are created, stored, and shared at scale. The purpose of records management is to ensure retention is neither arbitrary nor indefinite, but instead guided by structured schedules that balance evidence needs, compliance mandates, and privacy expectations. Records that outlive their lawful or business purpose expose organizations to unnecessary cost, risk, and liability, while premature deletion undermines accountability and continuity. Effective records management provides a controlled lifecycle: creation, classification, retention, hold, and eventual disposition. Like a library that knows when to archive and when to discard, records management ensures that cloud systems remain organized, efficient, and compliant, while safeguarding trust in business information. A record is more than just a file or a message. It is information created or received in the course of business that must be kept as evidence or for operational purposes. Records may include contracts, invoices, audit logs, architectural diagrams, or chat transcripts that support decision-making. Unlike transitory documents, which may be discarded when no longer useful, records hold value for compliance, governance, or continuity. In cloud environments, the definition of a record extends into SaaS platforms, collaboration tools, and machine telemetry, where critical evidence resides. For example, an email confirming a contract amendment or a support ticket describing a system outage can serve as records in litigation or audits. Recognizing what constitutes a record is the foundation of governance. Without this clarity, organizations risk either keeping everything, which overwhelms resources, or discarding critical information, which jeopardizes accountability and compliance. A record schedule is the formal instrument that assigns retention periods and disposition actions to classes of records. Schedules specify how long a record must be kept, in what form, and what should happen when the retention period ends. For example, tax records may require 7 years of retention, after which they must be securely destroyed. Record schedules bring order to retention decisions, preventing both under-retention, which creates legal gaps, and over-retention, which inflates cost and risk. In cloud contexts, schedules can be mapped to automated lifecycle policies, ensuring enforcement is consistent and auditable. Think of schedules as calendars for records. They define the lifespan of each class of information. Without schedules, organizations drift into keep everything mode, a costly anti-pattern. With them, they align information governance with compliance, operational efficiency, and privacy obligations across distributed systems. Classification schemes organize records into logical groups based on function, content, or governing obligation. Records can be classified by business process, such as finance, HR, or operations, or by regulatory category, such as healthcare, tax, or privacy. Each classification maps to schedules, owners, and retention rules. In cloud, classification often relies on metadata tags that can be applied programmatically across object stores, databases, and collaboration platforms. Classification is like organizing a library by subject. It ensures records are accessible, managed consistently, and tied to obligations. Without schemes, retention enforcement becomes arbitrary, leading to both gaps and excess. Effective schemes also support e-discovery, analytics, and privacy compliance by grouping records logically for search and control. By embedding classification into systems and workflows, organizations transform chaotic collections into structured, governable assets that align with law and business strategy. Legal and regulatory mandates set minimum retention periods for specific record types, often varying by jurisdiction. For example, financial institutions may be required to retain transaction records for 7 years, while healthcare providers must preserve patient records for even longer under HIPAA or equivalent laws. Cloud services complicate this picture, since records may reside across borders and fall under overlapping regimes. Failing to meet minimums can trigger fines, sanctions, or adverse judgments in litigation. Regulatory retention is like building codes. They define non-negotiable baselines for safety and accountability. Organizations must track applicable laws across jurisdictions and map them into retention schedules. This requires constant monitoring since regulations evolve with privacy, financial, and operational developments. Cloud records management ensures compliance is consistent globally, with automated controls enforcing local requirements while sustaining centralized oversight and defensibility. Business requirements often extend retention beyond legal minimums. Records may need to be preserved for operational history, analytics, or to fulfill contractual commitments. For example, customer service logs may be valuable for product improvement or training, even if not legally mandated. Contracts may also require retention of documentation for warranty or liability purposes. Balancing these requirements with cost and privacy obligations is key. Retaining too much information creates risk, while retaining too little can undermine competitiveness or legal defense. Business-driven retention is like keeping receipts for budgeting or planning, useful beyond tax obligations. In cloud contexts, analytics capabilities magnify the value of records for operational insight. However, retention must remain deliberate and justified, ensuring extensions serve business strategy without conflicting with privacy rights or overwhelming storage. Governance ensures business needs complement, not conflict with, compliance imperatives. Privacy principles impose counterweights on retention by requiring minimization and timely deletion of personal data absent lawful need. Regulations like GDPR emphasize that personal data should not be retained longer than necessary. This means organizations must balance records obligations with deletion mandates, ensuring schedules reflect both compliance and privacy rights. For example, retaining employee records may be lawful during employment but excessive once contractual obligations end. Privacy principles are like spring cleaning. They prevent clutter that poses hidden risks. In cloud environments, where personal data may permeate logs, collaboration tools, and backups, ensuring minimization requires automation and vigilance. Deletion is not optional. It is a regulatory and ethical obligation. Aligning retention schedules with privacy principles demonstrates accountability, reinforcing that records management is about protecting rights as much as fulfilling organizational needs. Write once read many, or one storage and immutability controls ensure that records cannot be altered or deleted within mandated retention periods. In regulated industries, WARM capabilities are often required to prevent tampering with financial or compliance records. In cloud, providers offer immutability settings for object stores, ensuring retention clocks are enforced regardless of user action. This is like sealing evidence in tamper-proof envelopes. Content remains intact until expiration. Immutability not only satisfies regulators but also strengthens defensibility during audits and litigation. Without it, organizations risk claims that records were altered or deleted prematurely. Immutability demonstrates maturity, proving retention policies are not only defined but technologically enforced. Cloud WARM features give organizations both assurance and automation, embedding trust directly into the storage layer of records management. Legal holds suspend disposition for records relevant to investigations or litigation. When litigation is reasonably anticipated, organizations must preserve potentially relevant information, overriding retention schedules. Holds ensure records that would otherwise expire remain intact until release. For example, emails subject to a pending lawsuit cannot be deleted, even if their retention period lapses. Legal holds are like stop signs in automated workflows. They freeze action until lifted. In cloud environments, implementing holds requires integration across email, collaboration platforms, and storage services, with clear audit trails. Failing to apply holds risks spoliation sanctions, undermining credibility in court. Effective legal hold processes include identification, communication to custodians, monitoring, and defensible release. They demonstrate that organizations can balance compliance automation with situational judgment, ensuring evidence is preserved when stakes are highest. Metadata standards capture essential attributes for each record: creator, date, location, sensitivity, and retention codes. Metadata provides the context that transforms raw data into recognizable records. Without it, information becomes untraceable and unenforceable under schedules. Metadata is like labels on packaged goods. It describes contents, origins, and expiration dates. In cloud, metadata enables automation by driving lifecycle policies, search, and classification. Standards ensure consistency across platforms, avoiding mismatched formats or incomplete attributes. Metadata also supports e-discovery and compliance audits, proving the provenance and treatment of records. For example, tagging documents with retention codes ensures policies apply correctly. By embedding metadata standards into systems and workflows, organizations create structure and traceability. This enables defensible governance at scale, ensuring records are not just stored but managed with context and accountability. Vital Records designation identifies items essential for recovery and continuity planning. These are the records that must survive disruptions to sustain operations, such as disaster recovery procedures, customer contracts, or encryption key inventories. Vital records are prioritized in continuity plans, often backed by redundancy, enhanced protection, and longer retention. In cloud, designating vital records requires tagging and integrating them into resilience architectures. Think of them as lifeboats on a ship. Not everything is mission-critical, but some assets must always be preserved. Mismanaging vital records risks catastrophic loss of capability during crises. Identifying and protecting them ensures organizations can restart quickly, even under adverse conditions. Governance of vital records reinforces the link between records management and continuity, proving that retention decisions are strategic, not merely bureaucratic. Ownership roles create accountability for records management. Records managers, system custodians, and data stewards share responsibilities for defining schedules, implementing controls, and ensuring compliance. For example, a records manager may define retention rules, while a system custodian enforces them within a storage platform. Clear role definitions prevent gaps where no one is responsible. Ownership is like stewardship of land. Someone must care for and maintain it. In cloud, distributed environments make role clarity even more critical. Without it, records policies drift, leading to inconsistency. Assigning accountable roles also strengthens audit defensibility, proving governance is not abstract but actively managed. By embedding ownership into organizational structures, records management becomes a shared discipline, aligning legal, technical, and business perspectives under a common framework. Auditability requirements demand traceable logs of retention policy application and disposition events. Auditors expect evidence that records were kept or destroyed in compliance with schedules, not based on arbitrary decisions. In cloud, auditability may involve immutable logs documenting lifecycle transitions, legal holds, or deletion events. These logs are like black boxes in aviation. They preserve history for later review. Auditability prevents disputes, demonstrating that retention and disposition actions were executed as intended. It also strengthens compliance with regulations requiring defensible evidence of governance. Without auditable logs, organizations may be unable to prove their records policies were followed, undermining credibility. By embedding auditability into systems, organizations transform retention from opaque operations into transparent, verifiable processes that reinforce accountability and trust. Format durability and migration plans ensure records remain readable as technology evolves. File formats, storage media, and applications change, risking obsolescence. For example, records stored in outdated word processing formats may become inaccessible without migration. Durability is like translating manuscripts into modern languages. Content survives only if it can still be read. In cloud, this involves standardizing on open formats, planning migrations, and testing readability periodically. Without durability, records lose evidentiary value, even if technically retained. Migration must also preserve metadata and authenticity, ensuring records remain defensible. Planning for format change demonstrates foresight, aligning retention with future accessibility. It proves governance is not only about keeping records, but ensuring they remain usable, trustworthy, and relevant throughout their mandated lifespans. Access controls restrict records to authorized roles, applying the principle of least privilege. This protects confidentiality and ensures records are not altered improperly. In cloud, access controls may integrate with identity providers, enforcing granular permissions across storage and collaboration platforms. Controls are like library cards. Only authorized users may borrow or view specific items. Without access controls, records risk exposure, tampering, or loss of integrity. Strong governance demands role-based assignments, segregation of duties, and logging of access. For regulated industries, access restrictions are often legal requirements. Embedding access into retention systems ensures protection continues throughout the record lifecycle, from creation to disposition. It strengthens both privacy and security, proving that records are managed responsibly, not merely stored in bulk. Training and awareness are essential for consistent execution of retention policies. Employees must understand what constitutes a record, how to classify it, and when retention rules apply. Without training, even the best policies remain theoretical. Awareness programs provide clarity, reinforcing why records governance matters for compliance, privacy, and efficiency. Training is like road signs. They guide everyday behavior, preventing accidents. In cloud, where tools and platforms evolve quickly, training ensures users apply tagging, metadata, and retention features correctly. Awareness also supports cultural maturity, showing employees that records management is part of professional responsibility. By embedding training into onboarding, refresh cycles, and role-based modules, organizations transform policies into lived practice. Governance succeeds not through documents alone, but through shared understanding and consistent behavior across teams. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Cloud implementation of record schedules requires mapping retention periods and disposition rules to provider features. Object stores, file shares, and databases often support tagging, versioning, and lifecycle settings that can enforce schedules automatically. For instance, an S3 bucket may be configured to transition files to cold storage after 5 years and delete them after 7. This alignment transforms policy into automation, reducing reliance on manual oversight. Cloud implementation is like setting timers on appliances. Once configured, tasks run predictably. Without mapping, schedules remain paper artifacts with no operational force. With mapping, retention becomes measurable and auditable. Success depends on understanding provider capabilities, ensuring features like immutability, tagging, and logging support legal and business requirements. This integration proves that records management is achievable at scale, balancing compliance with efficiency in distributed, cloud-native environments. Lifecycle policies automate record handling through tiering, expiration, and archival transitions. These policies use metadata such as tags and creation dates to apply rules consistently across massive datasets. For example, a policy may automatically archive documents after 3 years, delete drafts after 1, and preserve contracts for 10. Automation is like irrigation systems in agriculture. Water flows where needed, without constant manual effort. In cloud, lifecycle policies prevent keep everything clutter while ensuring defensible retention. They also reduce cost by moving less accessed records to cheaper storage tiers. However, policies must be tested and reviewed to prevent premature deletion or retention beyond need. By embedding lifecycle automation, organizations reduce errors, improve scalability, and ensure that retention is not aspirational but consistently enforced in practice. Application integration ensures retention codes and record flags flow through business systems and APIs. Records management is weakened if policies exist only in storage layers, disconnected from applications where records originate. Integration embeds governance at the source. For example, a case management system may tag legal documents with retention codes that carry through to cloud storage. APIs allow automation to enforce these codes consistently, creating a seamless chain from creation to disposition. This is like printing expiration dates on food packaging at the factory. Control begins at origin, not at the warehouse. Without integration, records may be mislabeled or unmanaged, undermining defensibility. With it, records management becomes embedded in daily workflows, reducing friction and ensuring compliance across the entire information lifecycle. Collaboration and SaaS records present new challenges. Modern work generates critical information through chats, wikis, project boards, and ticketing systems. These items often meet the definition of records but lack traditional file formats. Cloud governance must address export pathways, retention integration, and legal hold capabilities for SaaS platforms. For example, preserving Slack or Teams conversations requires connectors or APIs that capture data in evidentiary formats. Collaboration records are like handwritten notes in a meeting. They may hold key decisions but are easy to overlook. Ignoring them risks losing essential evidence for audits or litigation. Effective governance brings these platforms into scope, ensuring they are subject to the same schedules, holds, and disposition rules as traditional documents. SaaS integration extends the reach of records management into the full spectrum of modern work. Log and telemetry retention balances evidentiary value against privacy and cost. Security logs, audit trails, and performance telemetry may be critical for incident investigations or compliance audits. At the same time, they consume vast storage and often include personal data, such as IP addresses. Retention must therefore balance need with proportionality. For example, retaining logs for 1 year may satisfy audit requirements, while anonymized aggregates are preserved longer for analytics. This is like storing security camera footage, useful for a time, but eventually excessive and invasive if kept indefinitely. In cloud, log retention policies must integrate with monitoring platforms and comply with regional privacy mandates. Proper governance ensures logs remain accessible when needed, but are deleted when obligations expire, reinforcing both compliance and efficiency. Encryption and key lifecycle management must align with retention policies. If cryptographic keys are rotated or destroyed prematurely, records may become inaccessible before their retention period ends. Conversely, planned crypto erase techniques can serve as a secure disposition method at the end of retention. This alignment is like ensuring that safe keys are available until valuables are no longer needed, and then destroyed when access must end. In cloud, where encryption is often provider-managed, coordination between retention schedules and key lifecycles is essential. Misalignment risks either accidental data loss or non-compliance with destruction requirements. Effective governance ensures encryption supports retention without undermining availability or defensibility. It also provides assurance that when records are retired, destruction is irreversible and verifiable, satisfying privacy and regulatory expectations. Cross-border residency requirements further complicate retention. Records stored in cloud environments may be subject to localization laws, requiring them to remain within specific jurisdictions. For example, health data in the EU may not be exported to non-adequate countries without safeguards. Residency rules are like national borders. Records cannot move freely without permissions. In practice, this requires mapping retention schedules to regions, ensuring storage locations comply with laws while still meeting business needs. Providers must be transparent about data placement and support geofencing. Organizations must also monitor changes in residency laws as new mandates emerge frequently. Cross-border governance demonstrates maturity, showing that retention is lawful not only in principle but in geography. It ensures global operations respect local sovereignty while sustaining resilience and compliance. Disposition workflows document the review, approval, and destruction of records when retention periods expire. Secure destruction methods may include overwriting, shredding, crypto erasure, or physical destruction of media. Documentation includes certificates of destruction, approvals, and audit logs. This workflow is like medical record-keeping for procedures. Every step is recorded to prove it was done correctly. In cloud, disposition workflows require integration with provider APIs and immutability features to prevent accidental tampering. Without documentation, organizations risk claims of spoliation or incomplete governance. With structured workflows, they can demonstrate to regulators, auditors, and courts that records were disposed of responsibly and defensibly. Disposition is the final essential phase of records management, proving governance extends beyond storage into controlled retirement. Quality control sampling validates retention in production environments. Sampling involves reviewing subsets of records to verify tagging, retention clocks, and policy enforcement. For example, auditors may select random records to confirm that they carry correct metadata and disposition dates. Quality control is like auditing product quality on a manufacturing line. Consistent checks ensure outputs remain reliable. In cloud, automated reports may flag discrepancies, such as records missing tags or retention schedules. Sampling provides assurance that automation functions correctly and exceptions are rare. Without it, silent errors may accumulate, undermining compliance. Quality control strengthens defensibility, showing governance is not blind reliance on automation, but a tested, monitored process that delivers reliability. Exception registers capture deviations from retention policies. Sometimes, records must be preserved longer for unusual cases, such as ongoing litigation, extended warranties, or historical research. Exception registers track these cases, noting justification, compensating controls, and expiration dates. They are like hall passes in schools. Deviations are allowed, but only with documentation and oversight. Registers ensure exceptions remain transparent, not hidden risks. In cloud, exception management requires workflow systems that log approvals and revisit exceptions periodically. Without registers, exceptions become permanent drift, eroding governance. With them, organizations demonstrate maturity by balancing flexibility with control. Exception registers show that records management is adaptable but still accountable, preserving defensibility under scrutiny from regulators or auditors. Discovery readiness ensures that retention schedules align with e-discovery obligations. Organizations must preserve, search, and produce records promptly when litigation arises. Discovery readiness is like having a fire extinguisher, rarely used but critical when needed. In cloud, readiness requires integration between record systems and e-discovery tools, ensuring holds, exports, and metadata align with evidentiary standards. Without readiness, organizations risk spoliation claims, sanctions, or costly delays. Schedules must balance minimization with availability, ensuring records are retained long enough to meet discovery obligations but deleted when no longer lawful or useful. This readiness demonstrates maturity, proving governance is designed not only for efficiency but also for defensibility in legal contexts. Metrics provide visibility into the effectiveness of records programs. Dashboards may track policy coverage, deletion backlogs, volumes under legal hold, and adherence to schedules. Metrics are like cockpit instruments. They reveal whether governance is on course or drifting. For example, a rising backlog of expired records awaiting deletion signals weak enforcement. In cloud, metrics must draw from provider logs and lifecycle reports, ensuring accuracy across distributed environments. Metrics support board reporting and regulatory audits, proving that retention is measurable and managed. They also highlight opportunities for improvement, guiding investments in automation or training. Without metrics, governance remains anecdotal and reactive. With them, it becomes proactive, transparent, and continuously improving. Vendor and sub-processor oversight ensures that third parties handling records honor retention requirements. Contracts should specify retention settings, export capabilities, and audit rights. For example, a SaaS vendor storing customer contracts must provide evidence of deletion when retention ends. Oversight is like quality control in supply chains. Every link must meet the same standards. Without it, records may persist beyond authorized periods in uncontrolled environments. Cloud customers must demand transparency, reviewing vendor attestations and requesting documentation of retention controls. Sub-processor oversight extends accountability across ecosystems, ensuring compliance is not lost at third-party boundaries. This reinforces trust and defensibility, showing governance encompasses the full data supply chain. Anti-patterns expose common failures in records management. These include keep everything forever, unmanaged exports sitting outside policy controls, and manual deletions without logs. Each creates risk, cost, and liability. Keep everything undermines privacy laws and inflates storage expenses. Unmanaged exports create blind spots, leaving records outside governed systems. Manual deletion without logs is like destroying evidence without witnesses, indefensible in audits or courts. Anti-patterns are tempting because they appear easy, but they collapse under scrutiny. By naming and avoiding them, organizations strengthen governance maturity. Anti-patterns remind professionals that discipline, automation, and documentation are essential, not optional, for lawful and sustainable records management. From an exam perspective, records management questions emphasize the ability to map retention schedules, legal holds, and lifecycle automation to cloud environments. Candidates may face scenarios involving regulatory mandates, privacy deletion obligations, or SaaS records integration. Success depends on reasoning, knowing why minimization is required, how legal holds override deletion, or how SBOM-style visibility applies to records. Exam readiness highlights integration, ensuring professionals connect technical features like WORM and lifecycle policies with governance processes like exception registers and discovery readiness. Mastery shows not only knowledge of compliance obligations, but also the ability to operationalize them in cloud-native systems. In conclusion, schedule-driven retention, immutable controls, and verifiable disposition deliver compliant and efficient records management in the cloud. Classification schemes, regulatory mandates, and privacy principles define what to keep and for how long. Lifecycle automation, metadata standards, and exception registers enforce policies consistently across environments. Discovery readiness, metrics, and sub-processor oversight ensure governance is both defensible and adaptive. Avoiding anti-patterns prevents excess, risk, and inefficiency. Records management thus becomes not an afterthought but a cornerstone of cloud governance, ensuring organizations balance compliance, privacy, and business needs. By embedding retention discipline into systems and culture, enterprises achieve sustainability, trust, and legal defensibility in their information practices. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.